After her footprints were found at the scene of a brutal double homicide, 55-year-old Sherry Heffernan has been charged with the murders of her father, Jack Enders, and his girlfriend, Francois Pitois. As her trial date approaches, prosecutors get some additional evidence to help convince the jury of her guilt.
There was red staining on the door. Ultimately, on 2 of those doorknobs, the DNA did come back to Sherry Heffernan and Jack.
And that's important because when you stab somebody, the knife gets bloody, it gets slippery, your hand tends to go down, you tend to get cut.
The DNA results seemed to prove Sherry was the only person who could have committed the murders. But when the trial starts in February 2024, Sherry's lawyers insist police have arrested the wrong person.
One of the defenses was, well, she's a 50-something-year-old woman, she's not physically capable of doing this. Well, we actually showed for the jury a video of her pushing this little boat. Somebody who's not physically capable of doing things doesn't push a boat on a trailer.
Prosecutors also counter with their strong evidence, highlighting Sherry's motive.
We were able to prove at trial that Jack did have a will, where his will in the past had left everything to Sherry.
In April of 2021, Jack changed his will. And the new will that he had created left everything to his grandson, Andrew.
Sherry, I believe that her and her dad got into an argument, and I heard that he told her that he was taking her out of his will.
I didn't know anything about wills or stuff at the time, so I didn't know who would benefit from it, but the only person that was tied to that house at the time was Sherry.
She was supposed to sell the house, and then he wasn't even allowing her to do that. Having all that taken away from her just made her snap.
Sherry left her home in Pennsylvania shortly after midnight on September 29th, 2021. She went to Surf City and arrived at that home at 4:58 a.m. She went inside, shot both Jack Enders and Francois Pitois.
Francois is then stabbed 17 times in the bed, because we do see those stab wounds through the sheets. So at that point, she gets up. We see a trail of blood from upstairs to downstairs on the steps. Jack was led downstairs. He then ends up in a chair, and that's where he's stabbed 51 times.
He had defensive wounds on the arms and hands. Nothing in the back. So she was looking at her father when she did this.
Then she stabbed my mom another 22 more times on the stairs.
Jack stabbed 51 times, Frenchie 39 times, both shot in the mouth. When the defendant was done, she didn't want to see what she did to her father. She covered him up. She didn't care about Frenchie. She just left Frenchie there.
For the jury, the evidence against Sherry is insurmountable.
They came to the same conclusion that Kristen and I did very early on. Sherry was guilty.
2 months later, at her sentencing hearing, Sherry maintains her claim of innocence.
I really wish I was the one that was killed, that I was the one that was dead. I would give my life today in a heartbeat to spare them.
But the judge isn't buying it.
Judge sentenced her to 2 life terms. In specific years, she has to serve a mandatory minimum of 63 years behind bars.
I tried to make sense of it. Like, why? Like, why would somebody do that to their own parent?
It doesn't make sense. Frenchie and my grandfather definitely did not deserve anything that happened to them.
My mom lit up the room. She was beautiful inside and out. That's the best thing I can say.
And if you knew her, you would love her.
At nighttime, when you go outside and you look up and you see all of the stars out there, that's how I remember both of them, Moms and Jack.
My mom, she was always caring. If you were her friend, she was your friend to the end. Jack had a big heart, and would help anybody he could. I will always be her daughter. The distance between heaven and earth will never change that.
An elderly couple is found murdered in their beachside home.
This was a very bloody crime scene. We're not talking a quick death. It was rage, it was anger.
Most of the stab wounds were to the face, neck, and front of the body.
One victim was stabbed 17 times while still in bed. Why would somebody do this?
According to loved ones, the couple didn't have enemies.
They just got along perfect, and they made each other glow.
They've been together about 15 years, living, like just some very idyllic retirement life.
But video evidence provides a glimpse of the killer.
That surveillance showed an individual who climbs over the picket fence.
We're all looking at this video, what the heck happened to the car? It doesn't vanish. Where did it go?
And the investigation reveals old hostilities and shifting loyalties that put family bonds to the ultimate test.
One of the first things that you notice is a for sale sign outside.
He changed his will, and the new will left everything to his grandson. Whoever did this was angry with these people and wanted them to know.
Sunday, October 3rd, 2021. It's a peaceful fall morning along the shores of Surf City Beach, New Jersey.
Surf City is a small town on Long Beach Island. Primarily consists of part-time residents.
From Memorial Day to Labor Day, you have the summer people coming down, but during the winter months, it's very quiet.
For Valerie Lewis Evans, the daughter of a local, the quiet is worrying. Though Valerie lives in Virginia, she's been trying to get in touch with her 75-year-old mother, Francoise Petois, for several days now with no luck.
I started calling her phone. The way my mom is if she don't call you back that day, she's gonna call you definitely the next day.
Francoise lives with her longtime boyfriend, Jack Enders, but neither of them are answering Valerie's calls.
The phone will go straight to answer machine. Then I keep calling and calling. So now I'm starting to get worried.
My sister had called me, and I knew something was wrong, because they talk every day.
Valerie called Surf City Police Department for a welfare check.
Police went to the residence. They knocked on the front door and were not able to make contact with either of the occupants. They then walked around to the back of the residence.
The back door was locked. And when they looked in through that window, they saw what they believed to be a body sitting in a chair. They were able to use basically a tool they would use to open doors and for cars and stuff like that, and pop open the front door.
Before even entering the residence, you start to get that odor of decomposition. As you continue into the house, it obviously becomes more pungent.
There is someone found in a chair. He's covered in clothing. It's pretty apparent that he is deceased. He's been stabbed multiple times.
Based on the physical description of Jack Enders, they were able to make a very educated guess that it was him.
Even for seasoned officers, the crime scene is gruesome. And farther inside the home, they find a second victim.
Evidence at the base of the stairs was the body of Francois.
It's immediately apparent that, there's blood everywhere, that she's been stabbed all over.
They immediately called for CSI and homicide squad.
When I arrive on scene, we conduct an initial walkthrough. We notice blood on the floor in the kitchen. As you step past or over Francois's body and head up the stairs, you see blood swiping down the stairs all the way up into the second floor, and that trail can be followed into the bedroom.
They found 17 what appeared to be slice marks going through the sheet, which we assumed Francois was stabbed 17 times while still in bed before she even got out.
2 9mm casings were found among the bedding.
This was a very bloody crime scene. There was blood, a lot of blood in that bedroom. There was blood going all the way down the stairwell. There were bloody footprints going out of the house.
What this scene was telling us is that the initial encounter was upstairs while Jack and Francois were still in bed. And as it was escalating or continuing, then came downstairs.
As CSI is processing the crime scene, the local police department go to every door in the area and they knock on the door. Say, hey, do you know these people who live here?
We needed to get a little bit more background information on the people that are inside of the house and start to get the biggest idea of who could have done this and why this happened.
Francois Pitois was born in France in December 1945.
My mom was from Great France. My mom was a very beautiful person, and she was very loving and kind.
Speaking of that's how I would describe moms. Always laughing, joking, just like she illuminated wherever she went.
My dad met my mom in France. My dad was military, so he was stationed over there. They met and they hit it off.
They started courting, and eventually they got married. And then they had me.
They went to Germany, and then they had me, and then we wound up in New Jersey. She became a nurse, and she always took care of people. She made sure their room, everything was nice and neat. Always giving and helping out people.
16 years into the marriage, Francois and her husband decided to part ways.
They ended up getting a divorce, but they stayed very admirable with each other.
All the kids were grown. She was still doing nursing, and she got her own place in Browns Mills, New Jersey.
Francois spent over 20 years working in a New Jersey nursing home, but never lost her accent. Patients gave her the affectionate nickname, Frenchie.
And I think it was 2001. She had a friend that she wanted me to meet, and that's when Jack came into the picture. My mom was hanging out at the beach, and a mutual friend introduced them.
Jack Enders was a retired businessman living on the shore.
He had been in the Air Force. He went to Penn State, and he, for many years, ran a very successful construction and building business in the Philadelphia area. Jack was a grandfather. He had 2 adult daughters, from his marriage to his lifelong sweetheart.
Jack had a wife that passed away from Alzheimer's, and my mom, dealing with patients and taking care of people, she knew about that stuff, and they just clicked. My mom was short, about 5'1", little petite French lady, and Jack was a tall, giant guy. They just got along perfect, and they made each other glow. You know what I mean?
Francois had her own home, but she spent a lot of her time in that house in Surf City.
We go there for summer, 4th of July a lot. I remember seeing fireworks there with them, and we'd all stay at the house.
They would always cook like all of this seafood for us.
They've been together about 15 years, you know, like just some very idyllic retirement life.
By 2021, Jack and Francois were looking for a change.
Jack wanted to sell the house because they were getting older, and I think he just wanted to get something smaller, maybe one level. His brother and his wife already, moved to Florida, so that was the plan.
But the couple would never get to make their move south a reality. Jack and Francois have become victims of a brutal crime, and New Jersey investigators are determined to find out who is responsible.
One of the first things that you notice is a for sale sign outside. It's the end of September, so again, it's a time where Surf City is largely uninhabited. Is this something where someone took an opportunity to go in and see what they could find, and that they happened to encounter these two individuals?
But there was cash found in the house. That goes against the idea that this was a robbery.
The wounds suffered by the two victims suggest a different motive.
Most of the stab wounds were to the face, neck, and front of the body. She had also stab wounds to her back, as well as a slashing wound across her throat.
So we're not talking once or twice. We're not talking a quick death. For me, it was rage. It was anger. This wasn't business. This wasn't a robbery. This was personal.
Coming up, investigators discover their victims were embroiled in a family feud.
The relationship broke up. They just cut him off completely.
And a suspect is caught on camera.
You were able to actually see what I would call almost like a ghostly figure go by.
Surf City detectives are investigating the brutal murders of Francois Petois and Jack Enders, an elderly couple found stabbed to death in their waterfront home.
The first thought is, who could have done something like this? You start to notice different things about this scene.
Jack Enders was found with clothing covering his face and body. Frenchie was not. He was stabbed in the chair. That's where those injuries were inflicted. Frenchie was stabbed in bed.
We find in these investigations that when it's, someone that is close to someone after they commit these crimes, sometimes they cover them with clothing that they can't, see what they've done.
What that tells us is that whoever committed this act had a closer connection to Jack.
Crime scene technicians comb through the house for further clues.
Once the initial police had responded, our crime scene investigation unit was called.
Directly at the top of the stairs was a bathroom, and in that bathroom, there was blood on the sink.
There was some blood on the counter. There was a towel. So it looks like whoever did this washed up in the guest bathroom.
Samples of blood are collected from surfaces the killer might have touched, along with any prints they left behind.
On the kitchen floor, we do see what appears to be footprints and blood.
We used a chemical called amido black to process the scene, and there were multiple latent impressions that were found. The first thing that we would want to do is take elimination prints from both our female and our male victim. I was then able to compare both of their feet to the print that was lifted at the scene and exclude both our female victim as well as our male victim. There is no database at this time that houses foot impressions. We would have to develop a suspect first, so then we can then obtain that suspect's footprints.
By now, 4 hours have passed since Francois's family requested a welfare check, and her daughter Valerie is beginning to fear the worst.
Nobody's calling me back. My daughter lives in Willingboro, New Jersey. So I called my daughter. I said, Noonie, I'm going to send you the address to Jack. I want you to go over there and see what's going on.
While down at the scene, I was approached by a Surf City patrolman who advised that there was a female that was looking to speak with a detective assigned to the case.
My daughter calls me on FaceTime. I told my daughter to hold up the phone so that I could see the house. And she does. And I tell the police officer, that's Jack's truck. My mom doesn't drive no more. If they go anywhere, they're gonna take Jack's truck. So where are they?
It's tricky at times. We knew who the people were inside the house, but we needed to identify them in a medically appropriate manner before notifying them, the family members, of the death.
I asked Noonie if she minded if we go back to headquarters to do a formal sit down and interview her, which she agreed to.
At the Surf City police station, Valerie's daughter tells detectives everything she knows.
We try to get a little information on the family dynamic, keeping that in mind, that whoever committed this act may have had a closer connection to Jack. And we learned that Jack has 2 daughters, both of which are in Pennsylvania.
According to Noonie, Jack and his daughters, Sherry and Terry, had become estranged over the years.
Both his daughters weren't talking to him, and he's just like, I don't know what happened. He felt bad because he didn't know why.
The relationship between him and Terry broke up because of her and her husband's relationship. They cut him off, just cut him off completely.
The falling out with Sherry was the result of multiple events, including an apparent betrayal of Francois.
Any holidays, my mom would send cards, and she sends Sherry a card with $200. So she calls me up, and she's crying and everything, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? She said Sherry took the $200 check and changed it into a $2,000 check. That never came of it because Jack wound up, paying my mom back for that check. But this threw their relationship apart.
We try not to be too influenced when somebody says, oh, this person hated him or they hated each other. People's opinions, people's positions, things of that nature are just not relevant. What's relevant is the evidence.
At this point, what we don't have is something concrete that says this was Sherry Heffernan. And when you're dealing with something as heinous as a double murder, you want to make sure that you get it right.
After interviewing the granddaughter of Francois Petois, detectives have their first lead on who her killer might be. Jack Ender's 55-year-old daughter, Sherry Heffernan.
While Jack has two daughters, Terry has been estranged from the family for a number of years. The other daughter, Sherry, still has ties to Jack, but as of late had been having a falling out with him.
Sherry and her dad were having a difficult time. But we want to make sure the evidence dictates where we go with our investigation. We talked to everybody in this case. Any friends we can find, any family members, just to build a bio on these people.
Sherry was the youngest of two. My mother was the older one.
Sherry had one son. She was divorced. She had worked as a real estate agent. I believe she had done some financial work. Her and her dad had been business partners, it appeared, over the years with different ventures.
Jack had been trying to sell this house for quite some time now. In fact, he had listed it at least once before and used his daughter Sherry as the listing agent because she was a realtor.
She was in charge of doing it, but it never got sold, and I think my grandfather got frustrated by that.
Frustrated enough that he hired a different agent to handle the sale. A decision that upset Sherry.
She wanted to be the one to sell it.
As investigators take a closer look at Sherry, on October 4th, the medical examiner officially confirms the couple's identities and the family is notified.
I answered the door and the police officer said that they're gone. They're no longer here. And I just immediately started crying.
While the family processes the news, investigators look to the autopsy for more answers.
The autopsy revealed that Francois was stabbed 39 times, all over her back and her neck. Jack had been stabbed 51 times.
Both sides of his jaw were broken, but it wasn't until the autopsy of Francois that they noted the clear bullet hole through her jaw, which then made him take Jack back out. And when they reconstructed his jaw, they could clearly see it was a bullet.
The forensic pathologist was able to determine the gunshot wounds were from a close distance.
From that point, we believe that Jack was led down the stairs at gunpoint after being shot in the face and led to that chair where he was ultimately found.
Most of his stab and slash wounds were in the front, as well as his arms, as he was trying to defend himself at that point, sitting in the chair.
While whoever is committing this crime is inflicting these stab wounds now upon Jack, we believe that Francois actually survived and made her way down the stairs.
Whoever did this could have shot him in the temple. That would have been fatal. But this was somebody who was angry with these people and wanted them to know that they were angry with them.
The autopsy findings also reveal a timeline for the murder.
The bodies were what I would call in the early stages of decomposition, which indicated to us we couldn't just look at October 3rd. Even October 2nd, we had to go back as far as we could.
Officers made me aware of a video that existed that was recorded from a neighboring residence's surveillance system.
When our detectives reviewed it, we found that on September 29th, a surveillance camera was able to pick up a white Winnebago.
We see the vehicle drive down North 7th Street in the direction of the victim's home shortly before 5 a.m.
We see this vehicle pull up, park. Approximately an hour later, we see the vehicle moving. The lights are turned off at one point.
As we continue to watch the surveillance, That vehicle leaves that area approximately 50 minutes later at approximately 5:50 a.m. And an individual is seen a short time later walking back towards the victim residence.
And we were able to actually see what I would call almost like a ghostly figure go by. I mean, this is 5 a.m. in the morning. It's dark.
After a brief search, detectives find another security camera, and it provides a better view of their suspect leaving the victim's house 2 hours later.
That surveillance showed an individual who goes over to the bay, climbs over the white little picket fence there, goes over into the neighbor's yard, and begins walking away. That individual had a hood up, appeared to be wearing clothing and shoes that were just too big for them, carrying, something yellow in their hand, and we do find blood, Francois's blood, on that fence.
Looking at the height of the fence, they appeared to be about 5'8", 5'9", 5'7", somewhere in there. We believe that this person was most likely our murder suspect.
I wasn't gonna quit until we found out who it was, and they were in jail for the rest of their lives.
Hours into the investigation of Jack Enders and Francois Petois' violent deaths, detectives have caught a glimpse of the killer. But whoever it is took extra precautions not to be recognized.
It appeared that this person who committed the murders took Jack's clothes and wore them out of the house. And that's why the clothes appeared to be so big on them.
We do not know at this point whether it's a male or a female. All that we're able to tell is whoever did this is approximately 5'8". We also know that the person that committed this act arrived in the Winnebago.
Now we know more between the hours of, say, 3:45 in the morning till after 7 o'clock in the morning on the 29th. Can't pull every surveillance camera on the island, but it's a barrier island. You're going over a bridge to get there. There's one way in and one way out.
That bridge has cameras, so we start looking at this camera, the eastbound camera, coming onto Long Beach Island.
Sure enough, we see the Winnebago come over the bridge. But then we don't see it get to the other side. So we're all looking at this video where, what the heck happened to the car? It's a Winnebago, it doesn't vanish. Where did it go?
That vehicle, as we continue to watch the surveillance, leaves that area around 7 a.m., headed westbound.
Investigators aren't able to make out a license plate from the footage. But if their suspicions about the killer are correct, they don't need one to locate the vehicle.
I searched for Sherry and was able to find an old license for Sherry with Sherry Enders as the name. Using that driver's license, I was able to locate a New Jersey registration. And that New Jersey registration came back to a 2003 Winnebago.
While it doesn't prove Sherry was the one who committed the murders, her connection to the RV makes it imperative that detectives find her and bring her in for questioning.
Authorities find that Sherry lives outside of Philadelphia, and they contact the Pennsylvania State Police.
Pennsylvania State Police drive by the residence and let us know that the Winnebago is parked in the driveway of that residence.
While Pennsylvania police set up surveillance at Sherry's home, New Jersey detectives travel to meet them.
We meet up with the Pennsylvania State Police, who says there hasn't been anyone coming or going from the house, but there is a truck parked in the house. A short while after arriving, that truck leaves the residence. We ask Pennsylvania State Police to follow the vehicle, and Pennsylvania conducts that motor vehicle stop. They're able to identify the driver as J.J. Heffernan, who is the son of Sherry Heffernan. From that point, JJ is asked to come down and has to provide a taped statement to speak about the family dynamic. While we're speaking with JJ, the officers that were conducting surveillance on Sherry's home have now decided to move forward.
Yeah, we located a active warrant for Sherry Heffernan out of Norristown, Pennsylvania.
So they approach the house and they call her out on a PA system under the strength of an unrelated warrant.
She did come out when she was ordered to, and she was arrested.
News of Sherry's arrest sends shockwaves through the families of Jack and Francois.
I was surprised at first when they were going to investigate her. I thought they were close. What would her reasons be?
And what kind of daughter does that to her own dad? She had that much hatred for her dad and my mom? They didn't do nothing.
Coming up, investigators obtain a warrant for Sherry's property.
We found ammunition that was the same as the shell casings found at the scene. And we had her Winnebago on video surveillance.
And the killer's true motive becomes clear.
I heard that he told her that he was taking her out of his will.
Having all that taken away from her just made her snap.
After connecting Sherry Heffernan to the murder of her father and his girlfriend, detectives arrest Sherry and bring her 22-year-old son JJ in for questioning.
We ultimately were able to rule her son out as a suspect through his phone records, which placed him in Maryland at the time these crimes were committed.
Sherry's son was also about 6'2", 6'3". The person in this picture is about 5'8", and a slender build. Nobody in the families matched that description except for Sherry.
And JJ can't rule out the possibility that it was his mother.
He provides us with limited information, but important information. Specifically that Sherry Heffernan owns and operates a Winnebago.
Also, he explains some of the family dynamic, that he and Sherry believe that Francois is a gold digger and that they blame her for their grandfather wanting to sell the house.
After gaining more insight from JJ's interview, investigators turn their attention to Sherry.
She's placed in an interview room. She has read her rights, at which point she invokes her right to have an attorney present.
She does not give a statement. However, the officers are able to collect a DNA swab from her. We get a search warrant for that Winnebago and for her residence, just to see again if we can find some evidence connecting her or someone else to this crime.
When that warrant is executed, this Winnebago that has been the vehicle of interest in this case, we were able to see some red staining almost immediately in the driver's compartment of that vehicle.
As the vehicle is transported back to New Jersey for further analysis, investigators focus on Sherry's residence.
When we searched Sherry's house, we found ammunition that was the same as the shell casings found at the scene, and we found a receipt for a gun. It was a receipt for a 9mm. Turned out to be the same type of gun most likely used to inflict these injuries. Every other gun she had lawfully purchased, we found in that house. We didn't find that one.
During the execution of the search warrant, we also noticed a surveillance system that is on the outside of the residence.
While investigators pull the footage, they also obtain a warrant for Sherry's cell phone.
The cell phone was very important. We were able to map it.
We're able to see that she leaves her residence at sometime after midnight, near the 1 o'clock hour on September 29th.
driving all the way up to the Pennsylvania Turnpike Bridge. She crosses the Delaware there, then comes all the way down to basically Route 72 eventually, which is the main artery going through Manahawkin into Long Beach Island, and crosses the bridge. And this became important because we had her Winnebago on video surveillance going over this bridge. We were able to show that she actually turned when she got over the bridge early. We talked to the local police and they said, yeah, that's a shortcut known by locals. It avoids a couple lights.
She arrives at Jack and Francois' residence at approximately 4:58 a.m., and her cell phone is turned off a short while later.
We have nothing else on that phone until it starts being used again at around 9 a.m. in Pennsylvania. So it appears she got to the scene and turned her phone off.
We're able to then track her back into Landenberg, ultimately until she arrives at her home right in the evening hours of September 29th.
And when investigators access the home's surveillance footage, they notice something about Sherry.
While looking through that footage, I saw Sherry Heffernan returning home that day on the 29th. I believe it was 7:53 p.m., if I remember correctly. She later goes back to the Winnebago and removes some items that look very similar to what she was seen carrying when she left the residence in Surf City.
And one of the things we were able to see is she was barefoot. And it was important because there were bloody footprints going out the front door at the crime scene.
Once Miss Heffernan was arrested, I was then able to go and obtain her foot impressions. And I was able to then confirm that, in fact, the bloody foot impressions were Miss Heffernan's. At that point, I had no doubt in my mind that we had the right person.
Now we have to prove this defendant's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Why would a daughter kill her father and his girlfriend in such a brutal way? Why would this person do this?
The complex dynamics of family relationships can sometimes conceal deep-seated tensions that simmer beneath the surface for years. Before erupting into unexpected tragedy, in the quiet coastal community of Surf City, located on Long Beach Island in New Jersey, the peaceful atmosphere of the autumn season was shattered by an event that serves as a profound warning about the destructive power of greed and resentment. This case, involving the tragic loss of Jack Enders and his longtime companion Francois Petois, reveals not only the meticulous nature of modern forensic science, but also the psychological deterioration that can lead a family member to commit the unthinkable. By analyzing the motives, the investigative journey, and the ultimate triumph of justice, we can draw valuable lessons about human behavior and the critical importance of community vigilance. To understand the tragedy, one must first look at the lives of the two individuals who were so deeply respected by those who knew them. Francois Petois was born in France in December of the year 1945. She was a woman who brought warmth and joy wherever she went, described by her loved ones as a beacon of light who illuminated every room. Having moved to the United States after marrying a military officer, she eventually became a dedicated nurse. For over 20 years, she worked in a New Jersey nursing home where her patients affectionately called her Frenchie. Her gentle nature and selfless dedication to caring for others defined her life. After her marriage ended in an amicable divorce, she focused on her work and her family. In the year 2001, her life took a beautiful turn when a mutual friend introduced her to Jack Enders. Jack Enders was a tall, distinguished veteran who had served in the Air Force and later built a highly successful construction and building business in the Philadelphia area. He was a grandfather and a man of great integrity. Tragically, his wife had passed away after a long struggle with illness. Because of her experience in nursing, Francois understood the challenges Jack had faced, and the two connected deeply. Despite their physical contrast, with Francois being a petite woman and Jack a tall, robust man, they complemented each other perfectly and brought immense happiness into each other's lives. For 15 years, they enjoyed an idyllic retirement, dividing their time between their homes and creating lasting memories with their children and grandchildren. By the year 2021, Jack and Francois were planning a new chapter in their lives. As they grew older, they decided to downsize and sell their large waterfront property in Surf City, with the intention of moving to a smaller single-level home in Florida, closer to Jack's brother. However, this decision to sell the house became the catalyst for a latent family conflict that would soon turn fatal. The investigation began in late September of the year 2021, when Valerie Lewis Evans, the daughter of Francois, became increasingly worried. Valerie, who lived in Virginia, was accustomed to speaking with her mother almost every day. When multiple telephone calls went unanswered over several days, a sense of dread began to take hold. Francois was not the type of person to ignore her family, and her phone went straight to the answering system. Sensing that something was terribly wrong, Valerie contacted the Surf City Police Department and requested a welfare check on the residents. When local police officers arrived at the beautiful seaside home, they were met with silence. The front door was locked, and there was no response to their repeated knocks. Walking to the rear of the property, they looked through a window and made a grim discovery. A figure was visible, sitting motionless in a chair. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the officers used a specialized tool to open the front door. Upon entering the home, they were immediately met with the unmistakable scent of decomposition, indicating that a significant amount of time had passed since the tragedy occurred. The scene inside was deeply disturbing. The body of Jack Enders was found in a chair covered with various items of clothing. Further inside the home, at the bottom of the stairwell, lay the body of Francois Petois. The physical evidence suggested a struggle of immense intensity and anger. Homicide detectives and the local crime scene investigation unit were immediately summoned to process the residents. As the forensic investigators began their meticulous work, they traced a clear path of conflict. In the upstairs bedroom, they discovered evidence of a physical assault that had initiated while the victims were still in bed. 9mm shell casings were found among the bedding, indicating that a firearm had been discharged. From the upstairs bedroom, a trail of physical evidence led down the steps to the main floor, where the final confrontation took place. The medical examiner later confirmed that both victims had suffered numerous injuries. Cape Ite Hat Jack Enders, having significant defensive wounds on his arms and hands, suggesting he had tried desperately to protect himself. One of the most critical observations made by the experienced investigators was the psychological significance of the scene. The fact that Jack's face and body had been covered with clothing, while Francois had not been covered, suggested a personal connection between the perpetrator and Jack. In forensic psychology, this behavior is often referred to as undoing or covering, which occurs when a killer has a close personal relationship with the victim and experiences a sense of guilt or discomfort looking at the consequences of their actions. This detail strongly suggested that the crime was not a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong, especially since a substantial sum of cash remained undisturbed inside the home. This was a crime driven by intense personal emotion and deep-seated anger. To identify the individual responsible, investigators began gathering background information on the family dynamic. The granddaughter of Francois arrived at the scene and agreed to speak with detectives. She revealed that Jack had two adult daughters named Terry and Sherry, who had become estranged from him over the years. While Terry had cut off contact completely due to personal family disputes, the relationship between Jack and his youngest daughter, Sherry Heffernan, was particularly strained. Sherry Heffernan, who was 55 years old, worked as a real estate agent and had previously engaged in business ventures with her father. The family revealed that a significant rift had occurred when Francois sent Sherry a check for $200, which was later altered to $2,000. Although Jack had compensated Francois to resolve the matter, the incident severely damaged the family's trust. The tension escalated further when Jack decided to sell the Surf City home. He initially permitted Sherry to act as the listing agent, but when the property failed to sell after an extended period, he decided to hire an independent real estate agent. This decision deeply offended Sherry, who felt entitled to the commission and the control over her father's assets. The true motive, however, lay in the legal documents governing Jack's estate. Investigators learned that in April of the year 2021, Jack had formally altered his will. In his previous estate planning, he had designated Sherry as the primary beneficiary of his assets. However, due to the growing estrangement and conflict, he chose to change the will, leaving his entire estate to his grandson, Andrew, and bypassing Sherry completely. When Sherry discovered that she had been removed from the inheritance and was no longer permitted to handle the sale of the house, her financial expectations and personal pride were shattered. The realization that she would receive nothing from her father's estate appeared to have triggered a profound psychological break. The nature of human relationships often presents a complex tapestry of trust, shared history, and mutual support. Yet there are rare and deeply troubling instances when these fundamental bonds are shattered by the destructive forces of greed and resentment. In the quiet coastal community of Surf City, located on Long Beach Island in the state of New Jersey, the seasonal transition from the bustling activity of summer to the serene quiet of the colder months usually brings a sense of peace and security. This seaside town consists primarily of part-time residents who visit between the holidays of Memorial Day and Labor Day, leaving the streets tranquil and mostly empty during the autumn and winter. It was within this peaceful environment, where neighbors know one another and crime is an exceedingly rare occurrence, that a profound tragedy unfolded in the autumn of the year 2021, sending shockwaves through both the local community and the surrounding region. The victims of this tragic event were John Enders, a respected 87-year-old retired businessman who was affectionately known as Jack, and his longtime companion, Francoise Pitoy, a 75-year-old retired nurse whom friends and family fondly called Frenchie. Their lives were defined by hard work, dedication to their families, and a deep, enduring affection for one another that had spanned nearly 19 years. To understand the depth of this tragedy, it is essential to reflect upon the lives of the two individuals who were lost. Francoise Pitoy was born in France in December of the year 1945, bringing with her a vibrant spirit, a warm accent, and a caring nature that she maintained throughout her life. After moving to the United States, she dedicated over 20 years of her life to working as a nurse in a New Jersey nursing home, where her patience, kindness, and devotion to the elderly earned her the beloved nickname of Frenchie. Her daughter, Valerie Lewis Evans, would later describe her mother as a beacon of light, a person who illuminated every room she entered, and who possessed a rare capacity for laughter, joy, and unconditional friendship. Jack Enders was a tall, distinguished veteran of the United States Air Force who had graduated from Penn State University and subsequently built a highly successful construction and building business in the Philadelphia area. He was a devoted grandfather who had experienced the painful loss of his wife to illness years prior, a difficult period during which the professional and empathetic support of Frenchie helped forge a deep connection between them. Together, they enjoyed an idyllic retirement, spending their time at the beautiful beachside home in Surf City, cooking seafood for their grandchildren, watching holiday fireworks, and supporting one another in their advancing years. By the year 2021, as they grew older, Jack decided it was time to sell the multi-level waterfront property to relocate to a smaller, single-level home or perhaps move to Florida, where his brother resided, in order to enjoy a simpler and more manageable lifestyle. The plans for their peaceful future were abruptly cut short. The alarm was first raised by Valerie Lewis Evans, who lived in Virginia and maintained a close, daily communication with her mother. Frenchie was known for her absolute reliability, always returning phone calls within 24 hours if she was unable to answer immediately. When multiple days passed without any response, and calls went directly to the answering machine, Valerie grew increasingly concerned. Her anxiety deepened when her sister also confirmed that she had been unable to reach their mother. In an effort to resolve the worrying silence, Valerie contacted the Surf City Police Department to request a welfare check at the residence on North 7th Street. When local police officers arrived at the home, they knocked on the front door, but received no response. Upon walking to the rear of the property, they found the back door locked, but looking through a window, they observed a figure resting motionless in a chair. Recognizing the potential urgency of the situation, the officers used specialized tools to open the front door and enter the home. Immediately, they were met with the undeniable signs of a crime scene, finding Jack Enders deceased in the chair, and further inside, near the base of the stairs, the body of Francoise Pitoy. The response from law enforcement was swift, coordinated, and highly professional. The Ocean County Prosecutor Major Crime Unit, the Surf City Police Department, and the Ocean County Sheriff Crime Scene Investigation Unit immediately secured the home and began a meticulous forensic examination. The scene presented investigators with a complex and challenging puzzle. There was a significant amount of physical evidence distributed throughout the home, starting from the upstairs bedroom, where the initial confrontation had taken place while the couple was still in bed, continuing down the stairwell and concluding on the lower level. Investigators recovered 2 9mm ammunition casings near the bedding, and a forensic examination of the kitchen floor revealed a series of latent footprints in the blood. Using a chemical enhancement process known as aphmau black, forensic technicians were able to lift these footprints for analysis. In a standard investigative procedure, the team took elimination footprints from both Jack and Frenchie, confirming that the footprints left by the perpetrator did not match either of the victims. This critical finding proved that an intruder had been present in the home. Additionally, investigators discovered that the perpetrator had attempted to clean up after the crime, leaving traces of blood on the sink, counter, and a towel in the upstairs guest bathroom. As the forensic team collected physical evidence, detectives began the vital task of speaking with family members to understand the personal dynamics and potential motives surrounding the victims. Valerie directed her daughter, who lived in New Jersey, to meet with the police. At the police headquarters, the granddaughter of Frenchie provided investigators had crucial background information regarding the family of Jack. It was revealed that Jack had 2 adult daughters, Terry and Sherry, both residing in Pennsylvania, from whom he had become largely estranged over the years. The estrangement with Terry was related to historical family disagreements, while the relationship with Sherry Lee Heffernan, a 55-year-old real estate agent, had deteriorated due to a series of financial and personal disputes. One notable source of tension involved a past incident where a $200 check sent by Frenchie as a holiday gift to Sherry was allegedly altered to a value of $2,000, an issue that Jack ultimately resolved by reimbursing Frenchie himself, though it severely strained the relationship between the family members. Furthermore, Jack had initially allowed Sherry to act as the real estate broker for the sale of the Surf City home. But after the property remained unsold for an extended period, he decided to hire a different agent, a decision that reportedly caused significant anger and resentment for Sherry, who stood to lose a substantial commission from the sale of the property, which was valued at over $1 million and eventually sold for $1,700,000. The most compelling motive, however, centered on the distribution of the estate of Jack. Investigators learned that Jack had recently taken steps to formalize his final wishes. While his previous will had designated Sherry as the primary beneficiary of his estate, Jack had grown increasingly frustrated with the ongoing familial conflicts and estrangement. In April of the year 2021, approximately 5 months prior to the tragedy, Jack executed a new will that completely disinherited his daughters, leaving his entire estate to his grandson, Andrew. This critical decision was a devastating blow to Sherry, who had long anticipated inheriting the valuable waterfront property and the associated wealth. Detectives hypothesized that the realization of being completely removed from the will, combined with the loss of the real estate listing, created a deep, festering resentment that ultimately culminated in a planned confrontation. The legal and ethical implications of this motive trace back to a historic precedent in American jurisprudence known as the Slayer Statute, which originated from the landmark case of Riggs versus Palmer in the year 1889. In that historic case, the court ruled that a grandson could not inherit from his grandfather's estate after being convicted of causing his death, establishing the fundamental principle that no person should be permitted to profit from their own wrongful acts. In the case of Sherry Heffernan, the tragedy represents a modern, dark manifestation of this ancient conflict, where the pursuit of material wealth completely blinded the perpetrator to the moral, legal, and familial obligations of humanity. The psychological transition from a daughter seeking an inheritance to an individual planning a violent intervention highlights the destructive potential of unchecked greed and entitlement. To reconstruct the events of the crime, investigators turned to modern digital forensics, surveillance technology, and regional transit records. A crucial breakthrough came from the analysis of neighborhood security cameras in Surf City. A review of footage from September 29, 2021, revealed a large, white recreational vehicle, specifically a 2003 Winnebago, traveling down North 7th Street toward the home of the victims shortly before 5 in the morning. The vehicle parked, and approximately 50 minutes later, it was seen moving with its lights temporarily turned off before departing the area. Shortly thereafter, another camera captured a figure walking back toward the residence of the victims. This individual, described by investigators as looking almost like a ghostly figure in the pre-dawn darkness, was seen climbing over a white picket fence, crossing a neighboring yard, and walking away from the scene. The suspect was wearing oversized clothing and shoes that appeared far too large for their stature, carrying a yellow bag, and investigators subsequently recovered traces of the blood of Frenchie on the very picket fence the suspect had scaled. Based on the height of the fence and the physical proportions of the figure, detectives estimated the suspect to be between 5 feet 7 inches and 5 feet 9 inches tall, with a slender build. The investigation then focused on tracking the movement of the recreational vehicle. Because Long Beach Island is a barrier island with limited access to the mainland, vehicles must cross the main bridge connecting the island to the highway. Detectives reviewed the eastbound surveillance cameras of the bridge and identified the Winnebago crossing onto the island in the early morning hours. But they observed that the vehicle did not immediately appear on the main road on the other side. By consulting with local police officers, investigators learned that the driver had utilized a specific, lesser-known shortcut used primarily by locals to bypass several traffic lights, a detail that suggested the driver possessed personal familiarity with the geography of the island. The vehicle was later seen traveling westbound off the island at approximately 7 in the morning on the same day. Using vehicle registration databases, detectives searched for a matching 2003 Winnebago registered to any individuals associated with the family. The search revealed a New Jersey registration for a Winnebago belonging to Sherry Heffernan, under her previous name of Sherry Enders, with an address in Landenberg, Pennsylvania. Armed with this vital connection, New Jersey investigators contacted the Pennsylvania State Police, who established immediate surveillance on the residence of Sherry. The Pennsylvania authorities confirmed that the distinctive Winnebago was parked in her driveway. While surveillance was ongoing, detectives observed a truck leaving the home and conducted a mobile vehicle stop, identifying the driver as J.J. Heffernan, the 22-year-old son of Sherry. J.J. was cooperative and agreed to provide a statement to investigators, explaining the complex family dynamics and confirming that his mother owned and operated the Winnebago. He also revealed that both he and his mother held negative feelings toward Frenchie, whom they perceived as an obstacle to their relationship with Jack, and a primary influence behind the decision of Jack to sell the beach home. Through a rigorous process of elimination, investigators successfully ruled out the son as a suspect. His cellular telephone records placed him in the state of Maryland at the time the crimes were committed, and his physical stature, standing over 6 feet tall, did not match the 5 feet 8 in height of the individual captured on the neighborhood surveillance footage. The physical characteristics of the suspect on camera, however, perfectly matched the physical build and height of Sherry Heffernan, who was the only member of the immediate family with both the motive and the matching physical description. On October 4, 2021, Pennsylvania State Police executed an unrelated outstanding warrant to safely take Sherry Heffernan into custody at her home, allowing New Jersey investigators to obtain search warrants for her residence and her recreational vehicle. The execution of these search warrants yielded a wealth of forensic evidence that dismantled any claims of innocence. Inside the driver compartment of the Winnebago, technicians discovered distinct red staining that was later confirmed to be blood. A search of the residence of Sherry revealed a box of 9mm ammunition that was of the exact same brand and caliber as the spent shell casings recovered from the master bedroom of Jack. Furthermore, investigators located a retail purchase receipt for a 9mm handgun, a firearm that was conspicuously absent from the extensive and legally registered collection of firearms found within her home. The most damning evidence, however, came from the digital and physical footprints left by the suspect. A search warrant for the cellular telephone of Sherry allowed forensic experts to map her movements on the night of the crime. The telephone data showed that she left her Pennsylvania residence shortly after midnight on September 29th, traveling across the Delaware River via the Pennsylvania Turnpike Bridge, and continuing down Route 72 toward Long Beach Island, directly matching the route of the Winnebago. Her cellular phone was active until approximately 5 in the morning, at which point it was powered off or disconnected from the network, precisely when the vehicle arrived at the Surf City home. The telephone remained silent during the hours of the crime and was powered back on at approximately 9 in the morning, registering with cellular towers in Pennsylvania as she returned home. In addition to the telephone mapping, investigators obtained the footage from the home surveillance system of Sherry. The video recorded her returning to her Landenberg residence on the evening of September 29th, showing her walking from the Winnebago toward her house barefoot. This visual detail was of immense significance because the perpetrator had left clear bloody footprints on the kitchen floor of the crime scene. Following her arrest, forensic analysts obtained physical foot impressions from Sherry Heffernan and conducted a detailed comparative analysis, confirming that her footprints were a direct match to the impressions left in blood at the scene of the crime. When the trial commenced in February of the year 2024, the defense sought to present Sherry Heffernan as a physically limited individual who was incapable of executing such a physically demanding crime. Her lawyers argued that a woman in her late 50s, lacking specialized physical training, could not have overcome two individuals or carried out such a physically taxing act. To counter this assertion, the prosecution presented the jury with a clear and undeniable piece of video evidence depicting Sherry easily pushing a boat along a recreational trail, demonstrating her considerable physical strength and mobility. The prosecution also highlighted the presence of her own deoxyribonucleic acid on 2 of the doorknobs inside the Surf City home. Experts testified that during close physical struggles involving sharp objects, perpetrators frequently sustain minor self-inflicted injuries to their hands as the object becomes slippery, leading to the transfer of their own genetic material onto surrounding surfaces. The presence of her genetic material, combined with the matching footprints, the ammunition, the vehicle tracking, and the digital mapping of her phone, created an insurmountable mountain of evidence for the jury. On March 1, 2024, following a 4-week trial before Superior Court Judge Kimmery Rahil, the jury returned a unanimous verdict, finding Sherry Lee Heffernan guilty on 2 counts of murder, as well as associated weapons charges. At her sentencing hearing in May of the year 2024, Sherry maintained her claim of innocence, stating that she wished she had been the one who had lost her life in order to spare her father and Frenchie. However, the court, recognizing the cold, calculated, and deeply personal nature of the crime, was not swayed by these declarations. Judge Rahil sentenced Sherry Heffernan to 2 consecutive life terms in New Jersey State Prison, carrying a mandatory minimum of 63 years of incarceration before she would be eligible for parole, effectively ensuring that she would spend the remainder of her life behind bars. This tragic case offers profound and enduring lessons for families, communities, and law enforcement agencies alike. It serves as a stark warning about the dangers of unresolved familial resentment, the corrosive influence of financial greed, and the importance of addressing domestic disputes through open communication, legal mediation, and professional therapeutic support. In many family systems, the discussion of estates, wills, and inheritances can become highly charged, representing much more than material wealth. For some, these assets represent validation, love, or control. When communication breaks down and expectations of financial entitlement are frustrated, individuals can become susceptible to extreme psychological distortion. To prevent such tragedies, it is vital for families to utilize neutral legal professionals, financial advisors, and family counselors to manage expectations and establish clear, transparent boundaries regarding estate planning. Neighbors and community members should also remain vigilant, recognizing that domestic conflicts can escalate, and should encourage individuals to seek appropriate help before disputes reach a point of crisis. For the law enforcement community, the successful resolution of this case highlights several critical best practices that can accelerate the apprehension of offenders and ensure that justice is served. First, the seamless cooperation across state lines, in this case between the Ocean County Prosecutor Major Crime Unit in New Jersey and the Pennsylvania State Police, is paramount. Establishing rapid, open channels of communication and mutual assistance allowed investigators to secure the suspect and preserve vital evidence before it could be destroyed. Second, the immediate preservation and analysis of digital evidence, including regional bridge surveillance, neighborhood security systems, and cellular telephone location data, proved to be the cornerstone of the prosecution. Investigators must prioritize the gathering of closed-circuit footage from the surrounding area as soon as a crime is discovered, as this data can quickly disappear or be overwritten. Finally, the application of meticulous forensic techniques, such as the enhancement of latent footprints, vekep hat amido black, and the recovery of genetic material from hat, Iga hat touch areas like doorknobs, demonstrates that physical science remains one of the most powerful tools in validating investigative hypotheses and achieving a successful resolution in the courtroom. Ultimately, the story of Jack Enders and Francoise Frenchie Pitoy is a reminder of the resilience of justice, the dedication of the public servants who work tirelessly to honor the lives of victims, and the enduring truth that the bonds of love, memory, and community will always prevail over the forces of darkness and greed. The quiet resort town of Surf City, nestled on the scenic barrier island of Long Beach Island in New Jersey, is known for its dramatic seasonal transitions. From the end of May through early September, the area bustles with families, beachgoers, and vibrant summer energy. Yet, as the autumn breeze begins to roll in, the crowds dwindle, leaving behind a peaceful, tightly knit community of permanent residents. In these quieter months, The rhythm of life slows down, and neighbors keep a gentle watch over one another. It was during this tranquil off-season, in late September of the year 2021, that an unsettling silence descended upon a waterfront home on North 7th Street, ultimately leading to a shocking discovery that would forever change the local community. The concern began in Virginia with Valerie Lewis Evans, who had spent several days unsuccessfully trying to reach her 75-year-old mother, Francoise Petois, known affectionately to everyone as Frenchie. Francoise was a woman of deep warmth and consistency, a retired nurse who had dedicated over 20 years of her life to caring for elderly patients in a New Jersey care facility. She was the kind of person who never let a day pass without returning a phone call to her family. When Valerie's calls consistently went straight to the answering machine, a growing sense of dread began to take hold. Francoise lived in the beachside home with her longtime partner, Jack Enders, a 75-year-old retired construction business owner and military veteran. Jack, too, was unresponsive. Realizing that something was deeply amiss, Valerie contacted the Surf City Police Department to request a welfare check on the couple. When local police officers arrived at the serene waterfront property, they initially found no signs of activity. The front door was locked, and knock after knock went unanswered. Walking to the rear of the residence, officers peered through a window and made a harrowing discovery. Slumped in a chair, outside, was a figure covered in clothing, clearly deceased. Using specialized tools, the officers bypassed the lock on the front door and entered the home. They were immediately met with the unmistakable, heavy scent of decomposition, confirming their worst fears. As they proceeded through the residence to secure the area, they located a second deceased individual at the base of the stairs. It was immediately clear that both Jack Enders and Francoise Petois had met a tragic and violent end inside their home. The scene that unfolded before the investigators was incredibly complex and pointed toward a crime of intense physical confrontation. Because of the level of decomposition, forensic pathologists later determined that the tragedy had occurred several days prior to the discovery, placing the timeline of the event around late September. The physical evidence left behind told a harrowing story of what had transpired. Upstairs in the master bedroom, investigators found 19mm bullet casings among the bedding, along with signs of a physical struggle. A trail of blood led from the upper floor, down the wooden staircase, and into the lower living areas, mapping out a desperate struggle for survival. Francoise had been fatally wounded upstairs, while Jack had been led downstairs, where he was ultimately found in the living room chair, covered with household clothing. The decision of the perpetrator to cover Jack's face and body with clothing was a significant psychological clue for the behavioral analysts. In the field of criminal psychology, the act of covering a victim's face, often referred to as undoing, typically suggests a close personal relationship between the perpetrator and the victim. It indicates a sense of guilt, shame, or an inability to look upon the consequences of one's actions, contrasting sharply with the treatment of Francoise, who was left uncovered. This suggested to the investigators that the crime was not a random act of violence, a burglary gone wrong, or the work of an opportunistic stranger, but rather a deeply personal attack driven by intense internal conflict. This theory was further supported by the complete lack of interest in the financial assets present in the home. Despite the violent natures of the encounter, valuable items and cash remained entirely undisturbed on the property. This was not a robbery. To find the truth, investigators knew they had to delve deep into the family dynamics of the victims. They began by contacting the family members, starting with the granddaughter of Francois, who arrived at the local police station to provide background information. From her, detectives learned about a fractured family structure. Jack Enders had 2 adult daughters, Terry and Sherry, both of whom lived in Pennsylvania and had become deeply estranged from their father over the preceding years. The estrangement within the family had been building for quite some time, fueled by unresolved personal disputes and financial tensions. Investigators learned that Terry and her husband had completely cut off contact with Jack years earlier due to personal disagreements. Meanwhile, the relationship between Jack and his youngest daughter, 55-year-old Sherry Heffernan, had also deteriorated significantly. A particularly painful incident had occurred when Francois sent Sherry a gift check for $200, only for the check to be altered to $2,000. Although Jack ultimately reimbursed Francois to keep the peace, the incident created a massive rift and shattered the trust between the family members. The tension escalated further when Jack decided to sell the waterfront home in Surf City. Initially, he had allowed Sherry, who worked as a licensed real estate agent, to list the property. However, after the house sat on the market without a sale, Jack grew increasingly frustrated. He ultimately made the decision to strip Sherry of the listing and hire an independent real estate agency to handle the sale, a move that deeply upset Sherry, both professionally and financially. For Sherry, the beach house represented not just a real estate commission, but a tie to her father's substantial estate. The final catalyst for the tragedy occurred in April of the year 2021, when Jack decided to make a formal change to his last will and testament. In the past, his will had left his entire estate to Sherry. Frustrated by the ongoing conflict and the fractured nature of their relationship, Jack modified his will to leave everything to his 22-year-old grandson, Andrew, completely removing Sherry from the inheritance. When Sherry learned of this decision, the emotional and financial blow was severe. She felt rejected, cast aside, and deprived of what she believed was rightfully hers. This profound sense of betrayal and greed simmered over the summer months, eventually culminating in a plan of devastating finality. To build a solid case, investigators relied heavily on a combination of digital tracking, neighborhood surveillance, and advanced forensic science. The breakthrough began when detectives canvassed the quiet neighborhood surrounding the North 7th Street home, looking for private security cameras. They discovered a camera on a neighboring property that had captured critical footage from the early morning hours of September 29, 2021. At approximately 4:58 in the morning, a large white recreational vehicle was seen driving down the street, parking near the victim's home. The vehicle was a Winnebago, an incredibly conspicuous and unusual choice for a getaway car, especially on a quiet barrier island during the off-season. The surveillance footage showed the recreational vehicle parking, and then approximately 50 minutes later, the headlights were turned off. A short time after that, a figure was observed climbing over a white picket fence in the neighbor's yard, attempting to walk away from the scene undetected. Investigators noted that this individual appeared to be wearing clothing and shoes that were far too large, creating a bulky, awkward silhouette. It was later deduced that the perpetrator had changed into Jack's own clothing to avoid leaving the scene in blood-stained garments, a calculated attempt at sophistication that ultimately became another clue for the police. By analyzing the regional bridge cameras, which monitor the single point of entry and exit for Long Beach Island, detectives were able to track the movement of the white Winnebago. It had crossed the bridge onto the island in the early morning hours, taking a specific shortcut known primarily to locals, and had departed the island around 7 o'clock in the morning on the 29th of September. Using vehicle registration databases, investigators quickly linked a 2003 Winnebago to Sherry Heffernan, who resided in Landenberg, Pennsylvania. With a primary suspect identified, New Jersey investigators collaborated with the Pennsylvania State Police to place Sherry S. residence under close surveillance. They observed the distinctive white Winnebago parked in her driveway. Shortly after police arrived in the area, a pickup truck left the property. State troopers conducted a routine traffic stop on the truck and identified the driver as Sherry S.'s son, J.J. Heffernan. He was cooperative and agreed to provide a statement to the police, explaining that while he and his mother harbored deep resentment toward Francois, whom they unfairly blamed for the family S division, he had been in Maryland at the time of the crimes. His alibi was quickly verified through mobile phone records, and his physical height of over 6 feet ruled him out as the individual seen on the surveillance footage, who appeared to be closer to 5 feet and 8 inches tall. While her son was being questioned, police executed an outstanding, unrelated warrant to take Sherry Heffernan into custody. Upon her arrest, she invoked her right to legal counsel and declined to make a statement. But investigators were legally permitted to obtain a biological sample for genetic profiling. This proved to be one of the most critical turning points in the entire investigation. Armed with search warrants for Sherry S. home and her recreational vehicle, forensic teams began a meticulous search for physical evidence. Inside the Winnebago, investigators utilized chemical testing to locate hidden biological evidence, discovering faint red staining in the driver S compartment that was later matched to the victim's. Inside her Pennsylvania residence, they uncovered ammunition that matched the exact 9mm casings found at the crime scene in Surf City, along with a retail receipt for a 9mm handgun. Although Sherry had legally registered other firearms, which were found safely stored in her home, the 9mm pistol listed on the receipt was conspicuously missing. The digital evidence was equally damning. A search warrant for Sherry's mobile phone records allowed experts to map her exact movements on the night of the crime. The data showed her leaving her Pennsylvania home shortly after midnight on September 29th. Her phone tracked her journey across the Pennsylvania Turnpike Bridge, through New Jersey, and onto Long Beach Island, arriving at her father's home at precisely 4:58 in the morning. Shortly after her arrival, the mobile phone was manually powered off, a clear attempt to disrupt any potential GPS tracking. The phone remained dark for several hours, only powering back on around 9 o'clock in the morning as she was traveling back toward Pennsylvania. Further validation came from Sherry's own home security cameras. When investigators extracted the footage, they observed Sherry returning to her residence on the evening of September 29th, carrying items from the Winnebago that matched the description of the items seen in the Surf City surveillance footage. Most notably, the home security video captured her walking barefoot across her driveway. This detail was monumental because the crime scene investigators in Surf City had processed several bloody, barefoot impressions on the kitchen floor using a specialized chemical agent known as aphmau black. When forensic specialists compared these latent footprints to the physical foot impressions obtained from Sherry after her arrest, they confirmed an exact match. The trial of Sherry Heffernan commenced in February of the year 2024. Her defense team attempted to argue that she was a 50-something-year-old woman who lacked the physical strength and capability to carry out such a physically demanding and violent act. To counter this assertion, the prosecution presented a surveillance video showing Sherry easily maneuvering and pushing a boat on a trail, demonstrating her physical fitness and strength to the jury. The state presented a mountain of logical, scientific, and circumstantial evidence, from the genetic material found on the guest bathroom doorknob and the neighbor's fence to the distinct tire tracks of the Winnebago, the mobile phone tower records, and the matching footprints. The motive presented to the jury was clear and devastating. Pure financial greed, resentment over being removed from her father's will, and anger at losing the real estate listing for the beach house. After a brief deliberation, the jury found Sherry Heffernan guilty on all counts. At her sentencing hearing, despite her continued protestations of innocence and emotional statements, the judge was unmoved by her pleas, emphasizing the utter lack of mercy she had shown to her father and Francois. The judge sentenced her to 2 consecutive life terms, carrying a mandatory minimum of 63 years behind bars, ensuring she would spend the remainder of her life in prison. The tragic loss of Jack Enders and Francois Petois serves as a profound and sobering reminder of the destructive nature of unchecked greed, entitlement, and unresolved familial conflict. It highlights how financial disputes, when allowed to fester without healthy boundaries or communication, can erode the foundational bonds of family and lead to devastating consequences. To prevent such tragedies, it is vital for families to foster open dialogue regarding estates and wills, utilizing professional mediators or estate planners to navigate difficult conversations. It also underscores the importance of community vigilance, particularly in quiet or seasonal neighborhoods, where neighbors looking out for one another and maintaining active home security systems can prove vital in protecting the vulnerable and assisting law enforcement. From an investigative standpoint, the rapid resolution of this complex case highlights the immense value of integrating traditional forensic techniques with modern digital technology. The seamless coordination between local police, state troopers, and forensic laboratories allowed investigators to quickly construct a timeline, track the suspect across state lines, and secure critical evidence. By combining physical markers such as genetic profiling and footprint analysis with digital evidence like mobile phone tower mapping and high-resolution surveillance footage, law enforcement was able to build an airtight case that left no room for doubt. This tragedy stands as a testament to the tireless efforts of the investigating forces, who worked honorably to deliver justice for Jack and Francois, ensuring that the light they brought to the world would be remembered far longer than the darkness of their final hours. The bond between a parent and a child is traditionally viewed as one of the most sacred and enduring connections in human society, built upon a foundation of mutual support, guidance, and unconditional care. When this fundamental relationship is corrupted by material greed, resentment, and a profound sense of entitlement, the resulting tragedy can send shockwaves through an entire community. The peaceful coastal town of Surf City, nestled on the barrier island of Long Beach Island in the state of New Jersey, is a place normally characterized by its tranquil winters and vibrant, family-friendly summers. It is a refuge where individuals seek the comforting sounds of the ocean and the slow pace of a well-deserved retirement. However, beneath the serene surface of this coastal haven, a dark and complex family drama was reaching a devastating climax, ultimately resulting in a horrific double homicide that puzzled investigators and left loved ones mourning a profound loss. The victims of this tragedy? 75-year-old Francois Petois, affectionately known to friends and patients as Frenchie, and her 78-year-old longtime boyfriend, Jack Enders, were living what many would consider an idyllic retirement. Francois was born in France during the month of December in the year 1945, bringing with her a warmth, resilience, and a delightful French accent that she preserved throughout her life. After moving to the United States, she dedicated over 20 years of her life to the nursing profession, selflessly caring for elderly patients in New Jersey and earning a reputation as a beacon of light who could illuminate any room she entered. Jack Enders was a proud veteran of the United States Air Force, an alumnus of Pennsylvania State University, and a highly successful retired businessman who had operated a construction and building company in the Philadelphia area. Having lost his wife to a long battle with illness, Jack found a kindred spirit in Francois, whose experience as a nurse and natural compassion made them a perfect match. For 15 years, the couple shared a deep affection, complementing each other perfectly and glowing in each other's presence. By the late summer of the year 2021, they were planning to sell their multi-level waterfront property in Surf City to relocate to a simpler, single-level home in Florida, closer to Jack's brother. The concern that eventually exposed this tragedy began in late September of the year 2021, when Francois' daughter, Valerie Lewis Evans, who resided in Virginia, noticed an unusual and worrying silence from her mother. Francois was a woman of consistent habits, always returning phone calls within a day. When multiple days passed and calls went directly to an answering machine, Valerie's anxiety escalated. She contacted her daughter in New Jersey to check on the couple, and subsequently requested that the Surf City Police Department perform a welfare check at the waterfront home. Upon arriving at the quiet residence, police officers knocked on the front door, but received no response. Recognizing that Jack's truck was still parked outside, officers walked to the rear of the property. Peering through a back window, they made a somber discovery, spotting what appeared to be a deceased individual resting in a chair. Utilizing specialized entry tools, the officers bypassed the lock on the front door. As they entered, the unmistakable odor of decomposition confirmed their worst fears. They discovered the body of Jack Enders in a chair, covered in clothing, and further inside, at the base of the staircase, they located the body of Francois Petois. The entire scene was highly disturbed, with extensive physical evidence indicating a prolonged and intense struggle. The subsequent investigation required the immediate mobilization of the local police, the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office, and specialized forensic units. Investigators noted a trail of biological evidence leading from the upstairs master bedroom, down the stairwell, and into the lower level of the home. Upstairs in the bedroom, the condition of the bedding suggested that the initial confrontation had occurred while the victims were still in bed. The perpetrator had also utilized a firearm, as evidenced by 2 spent 9mm shell casings recovered from the bedding. The physical evidence indicated that after the initial confrontation upstairs, the struggle continued downstairs, where Jack was ultimately incapacitated in a chair. In a telling forensic detail, Jack's face and body had been deliberately covered with clothing, whereas Francois had not been covered. Behavioral analysts and seasoned investigators recognize this behavior as a common psychological phenomenon known as undoing, where a perpetrator who possesses a close personal relationship with a victim covers the victim's face or body to avoid confronting the reality of their actions. This detail immediately suggested to investigators that the perpetrator had a close, personal connection to Jack Enders rather than Francois. As forensic specialists processed the scene, they utilized a highly sensitive chemical known as aphmau black, which is designed to detect and enhance latent protein impressions, such as footprints left in biological fluids. The application of this chemical revealed multiple clear bare footprint impressions on the kitchen floor. Forensic specialists took elimination prints from Bayotte hot deceased victims and were able to definitively exclude both Jack and Francois as the source of these footprints. Because there is no centralized database for footprint impressions, in the same manner that exists for fingerprints, investigators knew they would first need to identify a viable suspect before they could compare and match the prints. Simultaneously, investigators discovered that the perpetrator had attempted to clean up after the crime, leaving traces of biological material on the sink, counter, and a towel in the guest bathroom at the top of the stairs. Technicians carefully gathered these samples, securing vital deoxyribonucleic acid evidence that would eventually prove instrumental in identifying the killer. To identify a suspect, investigators turned their attention to the family dynamics of the victims. Through interviews with Francois' granddaughter, who had traveled to the scene, and other family members, police began to piece together a history of deep-seated familial discord. They learned that Jack had 2 adult daughters from his previous marriage, Terry and Sherry Heffernan, both of whom resided in Pennsylvania. While Jack had been estranged from Terry for several years due to unrelated family matters, his relationship with his youngest daughter, 55-year-old Sherry Heffernan, had become increasingly volatile. Family members recounted a history of financial disputes and perceived betrayals. On one notable occasion, Francois had kindly sent Sherry a card containing a check for $200. Sherry allegedly altered the check to read $2,000. Although Jack ultimately repaid Francois to keep the peace and prevent legal consequences for his daughter, the incident caused a severe rift in the family. The tension escalated further due to disagreements regarding Jack's real estate. Sherry, who worked as a licensed real estate agent, had been given the opportunity to list the Surf City home for sale. However, after the property remained on the market for an extended period without a successful sale, a frustrated Jack decided to hire a different real estate agent to handle the transaction. This decision deeply upset Sherry, who viewed the listing not only as a significant financial opportunity, but also as her rightful domain. More significantly, investigators uncovered a monumental shift in Jack's estate planning. In April of the year 2021, Jack had officially altered his will. While his previous will had designated Sherry as the primary beneficiary of his estate, the revised document left his entire estate to his grandson, Andrew, completely removing Sherry from the inheritance. Shortly before the tragedy, Jack had reportedly informed Sherry of this change, a revelation that investigators believe served as the ultimate catalyst, causing her to lose control under the weight of financial desperation and perceived rejection. In their quest to establish a precise timeline, investigators reviewed security footage from neighboring residences. A surveillance camera located on a nearby property captured a highly distinctive white Winnebago recreational vehicle driving down the street toward the victim's home. At approximately 4:58 in the morning on September 29, 2021. Vehicle parked, and approximately 50 minutes later, at 5:50 in the morning, the lights of the vehicle were extinguished. Shortly thereafter, a figure wearing oversized clothing and shoes was observed, walking back toward the residence. A second security camera captured a clearer view of the suspect, approximately 2 hours later, climbing over a white picket fence at the rear of the property and walking away toward the bay. The suspect appeared to be wearing clothing that was far too large, a deliberate attempt to alter their physical silhouette and obscure their identity. Investigators recovered biological material from the picket fence, which was later confirmed to match Francois' profile, indicating that the fleeing suspect had indeed scaled the fence. The pursuit of the white Winnebago led investigators to analyze traffic and surveillance cameras monitoring the single bridge that connects Long Beach Island to the mainland. While the bridge cameras captured the white recreational vehicle entering the island early that morning, further footage showed the vehicle departing the island, heading westbound. At approximately 7:00 in the morning, although the license plate was not clearly visible in the footage, a search of motor vehicle records for Sherry Heffernan revealed that she was the registered owner of a 2003 Winnebago. This critical connection allowed investigators to bridge the gap between the crime scene and the suspect. New Jersey authorities contacted the Pennsylvania State Police, who immediately dispatched officers to conduct surveillance on Sherry S. residence in Landenberg, Pennsylvania. Upon arrival, officers confirmed that the distinctive white Winnebago was indeed parked in her driveway. While monitoring the residence, officers observed a truck departing the property and conducted a coordinated motor vehicle stop. The driver was identified as Sherry S. 22-year-old son, J. Heffernan. He was transported to a local police station where he provided a voluntary statement. While investigators were able to utilize cellular telephone records to definitively rule him out as a suspect, placing him in Maryland at the time of the crimes, his interview provided crucial context. He confirmed that his mother owned and operated the Winnebago and shared that both he and his mother harbored deep resentment toward Francois, whom they falsely accused of being a gold digger and blamed for Jack's decision to sell the waterfront home. Armed with this information and discovering an active, unrelated warrant for Sherry S. arrest out of Norristown, Pennsylvania, officers approached the residence and utilized a public address system to order her outside. Sherry complied and was taken into custody without incident. Following her arrest, investigators obtained search warrants for her residence and the Winnebago. Inside the recreational vehicle, forensic teams immediately detected visible red staining in the driver S compartment, which was subsequently analyzed and confirmed to contain biological material. In the search of her Pennsylvania residence, investigators discovered a receipt for a recently purchased 9mm handgun, the exact caliber of the shell casings recovered from the crime scene. While several other legally purchased firearms were located within the home, the 9mm handgun listed on the receipt was conspicuously missing. Furthermore, investigators retrieved footage from Sherry S. home security system. The recordings from September 29, 2021, captured Sherry returning home at 7:53 in the evening. In a highly significant detail, She was observed walking barefoot and later retrieving items from the Winnebago that closely matched the items the suspect was seen carrying in the Surf City surveillance footage. To solidify their case, investigators obtained a search warrant to collect Sherry S. biological samples and footprint impressions. A forensic comparison confirmed that the bloody bare footprints left on the kitchen floor of the crime scene matched Sherry foot structure with absolute scientific certainty. Additionally, deoxyribonucleic acid analysis of the biological material recovered from the guest bathroom doorknobs and sink matched both Sherry Heffernan and Jack Enders. Cellular telephone mapping further dismantled her defense. Investigators demonstrated that her cell phone traveled from her Pennsylvania home shortly after midnight on September 29th, crossing the Delaware River and navigating the specific local shortcuts onto Long Beach Island, arriving near the victim's home at 4:58 in the morning. The phone was deliberately powered off shortly thereafter, remaining dark during the exact window of the crimes, before being powered back on at approximately 9:00 in the morning as she traveled back toward Pennsylvania. When the trial commenced in February of the year 2024, Sherry's defense team attempted to argue that she was a 55-year-old woman who lacked the physical strength and stamina required to perpetrate such a demanding and intense physical assault. To counter this assertion, the prosecution presented a surveillance video showing Sherry effortlessly pushing a boat along a trail, demonstrating her significant physical capability and debunking the defense's claims. The prosecution also highlighted the clear financial motive, proving that Jack's decision to remove Sherry from his will and deny her the real estate listing had triggered a fatal mixture of resentment and desperation. The jury, presented with an insurmountable mountain of scientific, digital, and circumstantial evidence, quickly returned a verdict of guilty on all charges. In April of the year 2024, 2 years after the crime, the judge sentenced Sherry Heffernan to 2 consecutive life terms, carrying a mandatory minimum of 63 years in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring she would spend the remainder of her natural life behind bars. An analysis of this tragic case reveals a profound and unsettling motive rooted in psychological entitlement and material desperation. In many domestic homicides involving inheritance disputes, the perpetrator suffers from a distorted perception of reality, viewing a parent's accumulated wealth not as a generous gift to be earned, but as a personal possession to which they are inherently entitled. When a parent exercises their legal and personal autonomy to redirect their hard-earned resources, it can shatter the perpetrator's fragile sense of security and self-worth, transforming familial affection into lethal hostility. Such crimes occur hot alarming frequency because financial enmeshment, coupled with unresolved emotional conflicts, can fester over decades, creating a pressure cooker of resentment that explodes when financial expectations are suddenly thwarted. From an analytical standpoint, the criminal sophistication in this case was remarkably low, characterized by a series of poorly conceived attempts to evade detection that ultimately served as the very clues that sealed her fate. In a display of mild irony, the perpetrator chose to drive a massive, lumbering white recreational vehicle, essentially a rolling house, to commit a clandestine crime on a highly monitored barrier island with only one point of entry and exit. Her decision to power off her cellular telephone during the exact hours of the crime, far from erasing her digital presence, created a conspicuous data vacuum that perfectly framed her journey and aligned with the physical surveillance footage. Furthermore, while she wore oversized clothing and her father's shoes to distort her height and shoe size, she ultimately walked barefoot through the crime scene, leaving behind a flawless set of unique footprint impressions that forensic scientists easily matched to her feet. By keeping the receipt for the missing 9mm firearm and preserving the Winnebago with visible biological stains, she ensured that the police had a direct, unbroken path to her conviction. This case offers profound life lessons for communities and families worldwide. To prevent such devastating outcomes, it is essential to foster healthy emotional boundaries and financial independence within families. Relying heavily on the expectation of a future inheritance can stunt personal development and breed unhealthy dependence, making any changes to estate planning feel like a personal assault.
Open.
Transparent communication regarding estate planning and financial decisions can help diffuse potential conflicts before they escalate into deep-seated resentment. Furthermore, family members must remain vigilant to early warning signs of financial exploitation or extreme entitlement, such as the unauthorized alteration of checks or intense hostility over real estate decisions, and seek professional mediation or legal boundaries when necessary. For the law enforcement community, this case highlights valuable strategies for resolving complex, multi-jurisdictional crimes swiftly and effectively. The rapid resolution of this investigation was made possible by the seamless, immediate cooperation between the Surf City Police Department, the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office, and the Pennsylvania State Police. By quickly sharing digital surveillance data, utilizing automated license plate readers, and integrating cellular telephone mapping, authorities were able to track the suspect across state lines within hours of discovering the scene. Additionally, the meticulous collection and preservation of biological evidence, combined with advanced forensic techniques like amido black chemical enhancement, ensured that the physical evidence was undeniable. To accelerate future investigations, law enforcement agencies must continue to invest in interconnected regional surveillance networks, rapid DNA processing capabilities, and standardized protocols for multi-state digital forensics, ensuring that justice is served swiftly and the memory of innocent victims is honored with the utmost dignity. The peaceful and picturesque setting of Surf City, New Jersey, located on the scenic expanse of Long Beach Island, has long been known as a sanctuary of quiet beauty. During the warm summer months, the area bustles with visitors seeking the refreshing ocean breeze. But as autumn arrives, the coastal town transforms into a quiet, close-knit community where neighbors know one another, and peace of mind is taken for granted. In this serene environment, an elderly couple, Jack Enders and Francois Patois, lived what many would describe as an idyllic retirement. Jack, a retired businessman who had proudly served in the United States Air Force, and later built a successful construction enterprise in the Philadelphia region, was a tall, gentle man with a generous heart. Francois, a petite and beloved French native who had spent decades working as a dedicated nurse in New Jersey, brought warmth and laughter wherever she went. Known affectionately to her patients and friends as Frenchie, she was celebrated for her caring nature and her ability to make everyone around her feel valued. Together for 15 years, Jack and Francois had created a life filled with mutual respect, family gatherings, and quiet beachside moments. However, the tranquility of their lives was shattered in the early autumn of the year 2021. The tragedy that befell them did not stem from an external threat or a random act of suburban random crime, but rather from a deeply rooted family conflict fueled by material entitlement and resentment. The subsequent investigation would reveal how fragile family bonds can become when poisoned by greed, and how the meticulous work of law enforcement can untangle even the most calculated attempts to escape justice. By analyzing this tragic case, society can glean profound lessons about human nature, the dangers of unbridled resentment, and the critical importance of early conflict resolution within families, while also appreciating the sophisticated forensic methods that investigators use to ensure that truth ultimately prevails. The roots of this tragedy trace back to a deteriorating relationship between Jack and his youngest daughter, Sherry Heffernan. Sherry, a 55-year-old real estate agent living in Pennsylvania, had once enjoyed a close personal and professional relationship with her father. They had been business partners in various ventures over the years, and for a long time, Jack had designated Sherry as the primary beneficiary of his estate in his will. Yet, beneath the surface of this family dynamic, tensions had been brewing for years. Jack and his daughters had become increasingly estranged. While his older daughter had cut off contact completely due to separate family disagreements, the relationship between Jack and Sherry began to disintegrate under the weight of financial disputes and perceived betrayals. One notable incident that severely strained their trust involved Francois. Francois had kindly sent Sherry a card containing a gift of $200. However, when the check was processed, the amount had been altered to $2,000. Although Jack eventually reimbursed Francois to prevent a formal legal conflict, the incident deeply fractured the family dynamic, creating an atmosphere of suspicion and resentment. The situations escalated further when Jack decided to sell his beloved Surf City home. He initially listed the property with Sherry, hoping she would handle the transaction as a real estate professional. When the home failed to sell, a frustrated Jack decided to hire a different real estate agent to manage the listing. This decision was viewed by Sherry as a direct personal and professional slight, stripping her of both a significant financial opportunity and her perceived control over her father's affairs. The final catalyst occurred in April of the year 2021, when Jack made the pivotal decision to update his will. Sensing the growing division and recognizing the lack of support from his daughters, Jack decided to leave his entire estate to his grandson, Andrew. This decision effectively removed Sherry from the inheritance she had long expected to receive. When Sherry learned of this change, the realization that her financial future would no longer be secured by her father's estate caused her to harbor deep anger. Family acquaintances noted that Jack and Sherry had engaged in a heated argument, during which he explicitly informed her that she was being taken out of the will and that she would no longer be involved in the sale of the house. To an individual whose identity and financial expectations were closely tied to this inheritance, this boundary was unacceptable. The resentment festered over the spring and summer months of the year 2021, culminating in a cold, planned decision to take matters into her own hands. In analyzing why cases of family violence over inheritances occur with such tragic frequency, psychologists and criminologists often point to a phenomenon known as generational entitlement. In many instances, adult children begin to view their parents' wealth not as a generous gift to be earned or received with gratitude, but as an absolute right. When parents exercise their autonomy to alter their wills, sell their properties, or direct their resources elsewhere, It can trigger a profound sense of narcissistic injury in the entitled individual. This perceived injustice can cause a person to dehumanize their own family members, transforming loving parents into obstacles that must be removed. In this case, Sherry did not keep her father and his companion as elderly individuals deserving of a peaceful retirement, but rather as adversaries who had stolen what she believed was rightfully hers. Francois, in particular, was unfairly scapegoated by Sherry and her immediate family as an outsider who was influencing Jack's decisions, a common psychological defense mechanism used to justify hostility toward a parent is partner. The planning of the crime demonstrated a high degree of calculation, yet it was ultimately undermined by the perpetrator, his own oversight, and the unavoidable digital trail of the modern era. Shortly after midnight on September 29th in the year 2021, Sherry departed from her home in Landenberg, Pennsylvania. She chose to drive her highly distinctive white 2003 Winnebago recreational vehicle, a choice that would later prove to be one of her most significant mistakes. To avoid detection, she drove through the night, crossing the Delaware River and navigating the highway system toward Long Beach Island. She utilized a specific shortcut known primarily to locals to bypass traffic lights as she entered Surf City. Arriving at her father's residence at Moff, approximately 4:58 in the morning. Shortly after her arrival, she turned off her cellular phone to prevent her location from being tracked by cellular towers, a classic tactic employed by individuals attempting to create an alibi. Once inside the home, a confrontation occurred. The physical evidence indicated that the encounter began in the upstairs bedroom while Jack and Francois were still resting. Tragically, both victims suffered severe and fatal injuries. Francois was attacked first, sustaining multiple wounds while still in her bed. Jack was then forced downstairs to the living room, where he was seated in a chair and subjected to a relentless physical assault. The nature of the injuries, which included defensive wounds on Jack, his hands and arms, indicated a desperate struggle for survival. In a telling psychological detail, the perpetrator covered Jack's body with clothing after the assault was completed, a behavior that forensic psychologists frequently associate with offenders who have a close personal relationship with their victims and cannot bear to look at the consequences of their actions. Francois, on the other hand, was left uncovered, reflecting the offender's lack of personal connection and deep-seated animosity toward her. The discovery of the crime began when Francois's daughter, Valerie, who resided in Virginia, became deeply concerned after her daily phone calls to her mother went unanswered. Knowing her mother's highly disciplined communication habits, Valerie reached out to her sister and her daughter, who lived closer to the area. On October 3rd, in the year 2021, Valerie officially requested that the Surf City Police Department conduct a welfare check at the residence. When officers arrived, they found the home secure and locked. However, upon peering through a rear window, they observed a figure resting motionless in a chair. Utilizing specialized entry tools, the officers breached the front door. Immediately, the unmistakable scent of decomposition alerted them to a tragedy. Upon entering, they discovered Jack in the living room and Francois near the base of the stairs, both having succumbed to their injuries several days prior. The initial phase of the investigation required the coordination of local police, county detectives, and state forensic experts. Crime scene investigators carefully documented the scene, discovering significant physical clues that would ultimately point directly to the killer. On the kitchen floor, they observed a series of bloody footprints leading toward the exit. Utilizing a specialized chemical processing agent known as amido black, which enhances faint blood impressions on hard surfaces, investigators successfully lifted several highly detailed foot impressions. These prints were subsequently compared against those of the victims and were successfully excluded, meaning they belonged to an unknown intruder. Additionally, investigators discovered that the perpetrator had attempted to wash up in the upstairs guest bathroom, leaving behind trace amounts of blood on the sink and the counter. As police worked to notify the families and establish a timeline, they turned their attention to local surveillance systems. Although Surf City is quiet in the off-season, many modern homes are equipped with security cameras. Investigators combed through hours of footage from neighboring properties and discovered crucial video evidence from the early morning of September 29th. A security camera captured the distinct silhouette of a large white recreational vehicle driving toward the victims, is home just before 5 in the morning, and departing approximately 50 minutes later. A short time after the vehicle departed, a figure was observed on camera walking back toward the residence. This individual, wearing oversized clothing that appeared to belong to someone else and carrying a yellow object, was seen climbing over a small picket fence near the bay. Forensic analysis of the fence later revealed the presence of Francois' blood, confirming that the individual on camera was indeed the perpetrator. The investigation gained significant momentum when detectives analyzed the security cameras, monitoring the bridge connecting Long Beach Island to the mainland. The footage showed the white recreational vehicle crossing onto the island in the early morning hours and returning westward later that morning. By conducting a detailed search of vehicle registrations associated with Jack's family members, investigators discovered that Sherry Heffernan owned a 2003 Winnebago that perfectly matched the vehicle captured on the surveillance cameras. Armed with this critical information, New Jersey detectives contacted the Pennsylvania State Police, who established immediate surveillance on Sherry's residence in Landenberg. The recreational vehicle was found parked in her driveway. During the surveillance, officers observed a truck departing from the home, driven by Sherry's 22-year-old son, J.J. Police conducted a vehicle stop and brought him in for questioning. Although J.J. was quickly ruled out as a suspect due to cellular phone records, placing him in Maryland at the time of the crimes, his interview provided invaluable context. He confirmed that his mother owned the recreational vehicle and revealed that both he and his mother harbored deep resentment toward Francois, whom they accused of being a gold digger who had alienated Jack from his family. This statement solidified the motive of financial greed and familial jealousy. As the evidence mounted, investigators obtained search warrants for Sherry's home and her recreational vehicle. Upon entering the Winnebago, forensic technicians immediately noticed visible red staining in the driver's compartment, which was later confirmed to be blood. A search of her residence yielded further damning evidence, including ammunition that matched the specific shell casings found in the victim's bedroom, as well as a sales receipt for a 9mm handgun. Although Sherry had legally registered several firearms, this specific handgun was conspicuously missing from the home. Furthermore, investigators retrieved footage from Sherry's own home security system. The video showed Sherry returning home on the evening of September 29th walking toward her recreational vehicle and retrieving items that matched the objects carried by the suspect in the Surf City surveillance footage. Crucially, the camera captured her walking barefoot, a detail that became incredibly significant when investigators obtained her physical footprint impressions. A forensic specialist compared Sherry footprints to the bloody impressions lifted from the crime scene using amido black and confirmed an absolute match. The technological piece of the puzzle was completed through the analysis of cellular phone records. Despite Sherry's attempt to turn off her phone during the commission of the crime, investigators were able to map her phone's location prior to 5 in the morning and after 9 in the morning on September 29th. The data showed her phone traveling from her Pennsylvania home, crossing the Delaware River, and moving directly toward Long Beach Island in the hours preceding the murder before reappearing on the grid in Pennsylvania later that morning. The combination of digital tracking, forensic footprint analysis, video surveillance, and biological evidence created an insurmountable case for the prosecution. The trial of Sherry Heffernan began in February of the year 2024. Her defense team attempted to argue that she was physically incapable of committing such a demanding and violent act, pointing to her age as a 55-year-old woman. However, the prosecution successfully dismantled this defense by presenting video evidence of Sherry easily maneuvering a boat on a trail, proving she possessed ample physical strength. They also presented the clear financial motive, demonstrating how her father's decision to alter his will and remove her as the listing agent had triggered a catastrophic loss of control and financial expectation. In May of the year 2024, the jury found Sherry Heffernan guilty on all charges. At her sentencing hearing, despite her continued claims of innocence, the judge sentenced her to 2 consecutive life terms, carrying a mandatory minimum of 63 years behind bars, ensuring she would spend the remainder of her life in prison. This tragic case offers profound lessons for families and communities. It serves as a stark warning about the destructive power of material greed and the psychological danger of viewing an inheritance as an entitlement rather than a potential gift. When family disputes arise over estates, finances, or property, it is vital to seek professional mediation, counseling, or legal guidance early to prevent resentment from festering into hostility. Communication should always remain transparent, and individuals must learn to respect the autonomy and personal choices of their aging parents. Additionally, this case highlights the incredible efficiency of modern law enforcement. The speed with which the perpetrator was identified and captured was the result of seamless cooperation across state lines. The intelligent integration of digital surveillance and the rigorous application of forensic science. By combining traditional police work with cutting-edge technology, such as cellular tower mapping, automated license plate readers, and advanced chemical enhancement of physical prints, justice forces can quickly reconstruct a criminal's movements and ensure that no loophole remains open. Ultimately, the resolution of this case stands as a tribute to the memory of Jack and Francois, a reassuring victory for the rule of law, and a powerful reminder that truth and justice will always prevail over darkness and deceit. The peaceful coastal town of Surf City, located on the barrier island known as Long Beach Island in New Jersey, is characterized by its dramatic seasonal transitions. From the end of May, marked by the Memorial Day holiday, until the beginning of September, marked by the Labor Day holiday, the area is vibrant, filled with summer visitors, families enjoying the beaches, and a lively local economy. However, as autumn arrives, the crowds depart, leaving the town exceptionally quiet, inhabited primarily by part-time residents and a small, tight-knit group of year-round locals. It was during this quiet, serene period in late September of the year 2021 that a profound tragedy occurred, shattering the peace of the local community and setting off a complex interstate investigation. The events began to unfold when Valerie Lewis Evans, residing in Virginia, grew increasingly concerned about her mother, Francoise Pitoy, a 75-year-old retired nurse. Francoise, affectionately known to friends and patients as Frenchie, was a warm, compassionate woman who had emigrated from France many decades prior. She had spent over 20 years working in a New Jersey nursing home, where she was widely loved for her kind demeanor and her French accent. Francoise lived with her longtime companion, John Enders, an 87-year-old retired veteran and successful businessman who had previously operated a construction company in the Philadelphia area. The two had been together for approximately 15 years, enjoying an idyllic retirement lifestyle in John S. waterfront home on North 7th Street in Surf City. Valerie Lewis Evans was accustomed to regular communication with her mother, who was known to return calls promptly. When several days passed without any response, and calls went directly to an answering machine, Valerie experienced a growing sense of dread. After consulting with her family, she contacted the Surf City Police Department to request a welfare check on the residents. On October 3rd of the year 2021, at approximately 4:00 in the afternoon, local police officers arrived at the quiet home on North 7th Street. Finding the front door locked, officers walked around to the rear of the property, where they observed a quiet interior through the windows. Looking inside, they saw Vekep. Hadate appeared to be an unresponsive individual seated in a chair. Using specialized entry tools, the officers opened the front door, only to be met immediately with the distinct, heavy odor of decomposition, indicating that a significant amount of time had passed since any life had inhabited the home. Inside the residence, investigators discovered a deeply solemn scene. John Enders was found deceased in a chair, his body covered with clothing. Further inspection of the home revealed the second victim, Francoise Pitoy, who was found deceased near the base of the staircase. The physical state of the home indicated that a highly intense, personal event had occurred. There were no signs of forced entry, and valuable items, including cash, remained undisturbed within the house, quickly leading investigators to rule out a simple robbery as the primary motive. Instead, the nature of the scene suggested a deep personal hostility directed toward the occupants. The Ocean County Prosecutor S. Office Major Crime Unit, the Surf City Police Department, and the Ocean County Sheriff S. Office Crime Scene Investigation Unit immediately initiated a comprehensive joint investigation. Crime scene technicians began the meticulous process of documenting the physical layout of the home. They observed red staining on the kitchen floor, which appeared to consist of barefoot footprints. To preserve and analyze these patterns, forensic specialists utilized a specialized chemical agent known as amido black, which is highly effective at enhancing faint latent impressions left in biological fluids. Investigators also collected elimination foot impressions from both John Enders and Francoise Pitoy, allowing them to systematically rule out the victims as the source of the footprints. The results confirmed that the barefoot impressions belonged to an unknown third party who had moved through the home. As the physical evidence was gathered, the medical examiner performed post-mortem examinations on both victims. The autopsy of John Enders revealed that he had suffered blunt force trauma, multiple physical injuries, and a gunshot wound to the face, with the primary cause of death determined to be severe trauma, including the severance of the right carotid artery. The autopsy of Françoise Petoy revealed that she had also suffered a gunshot wound to the face, alongside numerous physical injuries. The patterns of the injuries suggested that the initial encounter had commenced upstairs in the bedroom while the couple was in bed. Françoise had been attacked in the bedroom, where investigators recovered 2 9mm cartridge casings. The evidence suggested that John Enders was subsequently forced downstairs at gunpoint, where the encounter concluded in the living area. The fact that John S.'s face and body had been covered with clothing after the event was a critical psychological clue for investigators, as forensic psychology often indicates that a perpetrator who covers a victim's face has a close personal relationship. Vekep, ite them, experiencing a sense of shame or an inability to look at the consequences of their actions. To establish a timeline, investigators turned to local surveillance systems. Although Surf City is quiet in the off-season, several neighboring homes were equipped with security cameras. Upon reviewing the footage from September 29th of the year 2021, detectives observed a large, white Winnebago recreational vehicle driving down North 7th Street shortly before 5 o'clock in the morning. The vehicle parked, and approximately 50 minutes later, at 5:50 in the morning, the headlights were turned off. A short time later, a figure was observed on camera walking toward the residence. Additional surveillance footage captured an individual climbing over a small white picket fence near the bay at approximately 7 o'clock in the morning, walking away from the property. The individual appeared to be wearing oversized clothing and shoes that did not fit properly, and was carrying a yellow object. Forensic analysts estimated the height of the individual to be between 5 feet 7 inches and 5 feet 9 inches. To trace the movement of the white recreational vehicle, investigators analyzed footage from the bridge cameras, monitoring the main thoroughfare connecting Long Beach Island to the mainland. The bridge cameras captured the Winnebago crossing onto the island early that morning, taking a specific local shortcut that bypassed traffic lights, and later departing the island westbound at approximately 7 o'clock in the morning. Using vehicle registration databases, detectives searched for residents or relatives of the victims who owned a similar white Winnebago. They discovered that John Enders' youngest daughter, Sherry Lee Heffernan, a 55-year-old resident of Landenberg, Pennsylvania, owned a 2003 Winnebago recreational vehicle. This discovery shifted the focus of the investigation toward the family dynamics of John Enders. Investigators learned from family interviews that John had 2 adult daughters, Terry and Sherry, both of whom had become estranged from him over the years. The relationship between John and Terry had broken off completely, while his relationship with Sherry had become increasingly strained due to a series of personal and financial conflicts. One notable incident involved a check sent by Françoise to Sherry for $200, which was allegedly altered to $2,000. Although John had reimbursed Françoise to maintain peace, the incident had caused a major rift. Furthermore, a significant source of tension was the impending sale of the Surf City home. John had decided to sell the waterfront property as he and Françoise aged, intending to move to a smaller, single-level home or relocate closer to family. Sherry, who was a licensed real estate agent, had initially been given the listing to sell the property. However, After the home failed to sell under her guidance, John grew frustrated and hired an independent real estate agency to handle the transaction. This decision deeply upset Sherry, who had expected to manage the sale and receive the commission. The most critical factor, however, was a change in John's estate planning. In April of the year 2021, John updated his will, removing Sherry and directing that his entire estate be left to his grandson, Andrew Vero. Family members recalled that John had informed Sherry of this decision, leading to a heated argument. The prospect of losing her inheritance, combined with being removed as the listing agent for the home, appeared to have created intense financial and emotional pressure on Sherry, providing a clear motive for the crime. With this information, investigators obtained a search warrant for Sherry's cell phone records. The data revealed a precise geographical trail. Sometime after midnight, in the early hours of September 29th of the year 2021, Sherry's cell phone departed her residence in Landenberg, Pennsylvania. The phone traveled across the Delaware River via the Pennsylvania Turnpike Bridge, proceeded down Route 72, and crossed the bridge onto Long Beach Island, arriving in the vicinity of John's home at approximately 4:58 in the morning. Shortly after her arrival, the cell phone was powered off, remaining inactive until approximately 9 o'clock in the morning, when it was powered back on in Pennsylvania, mapping her return journey home. On October 4th of the year 2021, Pennsylvania State Police, acting in coordination with New Jersey authorities, located Sherry Lee Heffernan at her home in Landenberg. She was arrested on an unrelated outstanding warrant and taken into custody. Investigators subsequently executed search warrants on her residence and her white Winnebago. Inside the recreational vehicle, forensic teams immediately detected faint red staining in the driver's compartment. A search of her home revealed 9mm ammunition of the same brand and type as the shell casings recovered from the crime scene, as well as a purchase receipt for a 9mm handgun, which was notably missing from the residence. Furthermore, investigators recovered footage from the external surveillance system installed at Sherry's home. The recording from the evening of September 29th of the year 2021 showed Sherry returning home in her recreational vehicle. She was observed exiting the vehicle barefoot and carrying items that matched the description of the objects carried by the suspect in the Surf City footage. Upon her arrest, forensic analysts obtained physical foot impressions from Sherry, which were compared directly to the latent bloody footprints found on the kitchen floor of the crime scene. The forensic examiner confirmed that the physical characteristics, size, and unique features of Sherry's foot impressions matched the bloody footprints left at the scene of the crime. Additionally, forensic testing of the doorknobs at the Surf City residence recovered deoxyribonucleic acid, matching both Sherry Lee Heffernan and John Enders. In February of the year 2024, the trial of Sherry Lee Heffernan commenced in Ocean County, New Jersey. The prosecution presented a comprehensive, evidence-based case, detailing the physical footprints, the deoxyribonucleic acid on the doorknobs, the ballistic evidence, the digital cell phone mapping, and the surveillance footage tracking the Winnebago. The defense argued that Sherry, as a woman in her mid-50s, was physically incapable of carrying out such a physically demanding act. To counter this assertion, the prosecution presented video evidence of Sherry easily maneuvering and pushing a boat on a trail, demonstrating her physical strength and capability. The prosecution also highlighted the clear financial motive. focusing on the updated will that left the estate to her nephew, Andrew Vero, and her removal from the real estate listing. On March 1st of the year 2024, following a 4-week trial, the jury found Sherry Lee Heffernan guilty of 2 counts of murder, as well as multiple weapons offenses, including the unlawful possession of a handgun and a knife. On May 10th of the year 2024, Superior Court Judge Kimmery Rahil sentenced Sherry to 2 consecutive life sentences in New Jersey State Prison. Under New Jersey law, she was ordered to serve a mandatory minimum of 63 years and 9 months without the possibility of parole for each count, effectively ensuring she would spend the remainder of her life behind bars. During the sentencing, Sherry maintained her innocence, sobbing and expressing a desire that she had been the one to lose her life instead. However, the court found the evidence of her involvement to be absolute, and the families of the victims expressed a deep sense of relief that justice had been served, bringing a quiet closure to a prolonged and painful chapter. The resolution of this tragic case offers profound educational lessons for communities and families alike. It highlights the devastating consequences of unchecked greed, entitlement, and the breakdown of familial communication. When financial disputes or changes in inheritance arise, it is vital for families to seek professional mediation or legal counsel to address grievances openly and constructively, preventing resentment from festering into hostility. For communities, the case underscores the importance of neighborhood vigilance, particularly in quiet or seasonal towns, where older adults may live in relative isolation during the off-season. Maintaining regular contact with elderly family members and utilizing home security systems can serve as crucial protective measures. From a law enforcement perspective, this case illustrates the high value of interagency cooperation, meticulous forensic science, and the integration of modern digital evidence. The successful tracking of the suspect was made possible by the seamless collaboration between the Surf City Police Department, the Ocean County Prosecutor S Office, the Ocean County Sheriff S Office, and the Pennsylvania State Police. By combining traditional forensic techniques, such as latent footprint analysis using amido black, with advanced technology, including cell phone tower mapping and automated license plate readers, investigators were able to build an undeniable, objective timeline that withstood the scrutiny of a court of law. This balanced combination of physical evidence, technology, and dedication stands as a testament to the pursuit of justice, ensuring that the memory of John Enders and Francoise Pitoy is respected and honored.